You might know me as the girl who bought a house in Spain for 5,000 euros and another one on the same street for 9,000 euros and then another one for 20,000 euros. And yes, those deals are out there, but what does it actually take to buy a house in Spain and what are you going to spend after that initial purchase? In this video, I'm going to give you a realistic look at the entire process from start to finish. We are going to cover how to navigate a system with unregulated real estate agents, why you absolutely need a good attorney, and the surprise taxes that completely caught me off guard. I'm also going to break down the true cost of a Spanish renovation and how to safely and securely move your money overseas through Wise's safeguarded account without paying ridiculous bank fees. Hi, my name is Nicole. Welcome to my channel, Travel to Money, where we explore how to travel, adventure, and have fun on the road to financial independence. If you are coming to Spain from the US or the UK, there's a good chance you aren't looking for a completely caved-in roof like I was. I know a lot of people who come here are prepared to spend anywhere from 100,000 to 500,000 euros for a beautiful move-in ready retirement or second home. And if that is you, you are going to get an incredible house. But even if you have hundreds of thousands sitting in the bank, buying property internationally comes with taxes, hidden fees, renovation realities, and the logistics of moving that much money across the ocean. This video is sponsored by Wise, a global money management platform that I personally use. If you are planning a large overseas purchase, stick around because later in the video, I'm going to show you how Wise gives you volume discounts and dedicated support specialists for large transfers. And if you click the link in my description right now, you can get your first transfer fee free up to $600. Today, we are doing a deep dive. I am breaking down the true total cost of buying, renovating, and maintaining property in Spain. Let me give you a quick recap of how I got here. Back in 2018, I literally Googled cheap houses in Spain, and the very first listing that came up on Idealista was a three-story townhouse in a small town called Pego, just an hour south of Valencia. It was listed for just under 20,000 euros. I bought it sight unseen. A few years later, my neighbor was selling the derelict house directly next door, a complete shell of a house. I got it for 5,000 euros, which was a deal I just couldn't pass up. Then a few years ago, the house two doors down went up for sale, the one I'm in right now. It had a completely caved in roof. The owner just wanted it off our hands, and I ended up buying it for 9,000 euros, which was half of what the listing price was. But here's the truth. The purchase price you see online is never the final price you pay. In Spain, when you buy a property, you typically have to pay a 10% purchase tax. So if you are buying a beautiful coastal home for 200,000 euros, you need to mentally add 20,000 euros to that price tag right off the bat. But it doesn't stop there. I have to tell you a story about my most recent 9,000 euro purchase because this is a surprise tax situation that probably isn't super common, but could happen if you are bargain hunting. During the purchase process, my attorney informed me that the government had recently assigned a minimum value to homes in this region, also known as the cadastral value. So even though my agreed purchase price was 9,000 euros, the government said the minimum value of this property was actually 46,000 euros. Why? Because a previous owner had pulled a builder's permit years ago, so the government viewed it on paper as a fully renovated house. Instead of paying a 10% tax on 9,000 euros, which would be 900 euros, they required me to pay a 10% tax on 46,000 euros. That was a 4,000 euro surprise. I pushed back. We hired an architect for 300 euros to do a survey, and we appealed it. Eventually, they lowered the cadastral value slightly, but after all of the fees and different things I had to pay for, it was all a wash. But the lesson here is always have a cushion. If your all in budget is 100,000 euros, do not go shopping for a 100,000 euro house. You should be shopping in the 80 to 85,000 euro range to account for that 10% tax, the 3% legal retention fee for non residents, notary fees, and your attorney. Speaking of attorneys, you must have a good real estate attorney or solicitor here in Spain, and you want one within the autonomous region where you are purchasing a home. Real estate agents in Spain are completely unregulated, and there is no central MLS system. My attorney did everything for me. He got my NIE, my Spanish tax identification number. He did the property research to ensure there were no squatters or outstanding debts. He helped me open a Spanish bank account and set up all my utility direct debits. For my first house, his fees were 1,200 euros. On my next two homes, because I already had an NIE and a bank account, it was only around 700 euros. It is worth every single penny. Keep in mind, it has been a few years and prices could be slightly higher just due to inflation. Now, here is where we get to the actual logistics of making this happen. How do you actually pay for the house? If you are walking in the door with 50,000, 100,000, or even 500,000 euros to spend, how do you get that money from your US bank account into your new Spanish bank account to close the deal? Well, let me tell you about a mistake I made when I bought my first house back in 2018. I needed to send a 2,000 euro reservation deposit to take the house off the market. I went to my traditional US bank and sent a wire transfer. Between the flat international wire fees and the terrible hidden exchange rate markup the bank gave me, it cost me a small fortune just to send a relatively small deposit. I was sick to my stomach thinking about how much money I was going to lose when it came time to transfer the rest of the cash for the closing. Many traditional banks charge hidden fees and offer worse exchange rates compared to Wise. That is exactly why I switched to Wise, the sponsor of today's video. Wise is a global money management platform that I have used for 9 years now. When you are buying property abroad, relocating, or paying for major renovations, you are dealing with high volume transfers. Wise actually has tools and support built specifically for these large transfers. First of all, they offer volume discounts. Right now, transfers of 25,000 US dollars or more trigger tiered discounts, meaning the more you send, the more you save. And it automatically shows up right in the app. But my absolute favorite feature is the dedicated support for large transfers. Moving your life savings across the world can be stressful. When you initiate a large transfer in the Wise app, a button appears to contact their high volume support team. If you are buying property abroad or retiring overseas, sign up using the link in the description to get your first transfer fee free up to $600 the next time you send money for your overseas property purchase or renovation. Trust me, your bank account will thank you. Be smart, get wise. Okay, so you've bought the house, you've paid your taxes, and your money is safely transferred. Now what? If you bought a turnkey property, congratulations. You can just move in, open a bottle of Spanish wine, and head to the beach. But if you're like me and you bought a fixer-upper, the real spending is just about to begin. I want to give you a reality check on renovation prices in Spain right now because inflation is very real. When I bought my first house in 2018, I only needed minor cosmetic work. I spent maybe 5 or 6,000 euros total to get it into great shape. When I bought my 9,000 euro house, the one I'm sitting in right now, I originally thought, oh, I will probably put 20,000 euros into it. I am currently staring down a total renovation bill closer to 60 or 70,000 euros. Why? First of all, the cost of skilled labor has gone up. You used to be able to find help for very cheap, but today you should expect an average of 20 to 30 euros an hour for skilled contractors. And that is if you are acting as your own project manager and hiring people piecemeal like I am. If you hire a full company to come in and do everything quickly, you could end up paying even more. The second thing that caught me completely off guard was the sales tax. In the US, where I spend half of my year, sales tax is usually single digits, like 6% in Florida. In Spain, the IVA, which is their value added tax on materials, is a whopping 21%. When you are buying massive amounts of building materials, custom windows, appliances, and tiles, that 21% takes a huge bite out of your budget. Let me break down some specific line items for you so you can plan your own budget. Let's start with the roof. When I bought this house, the roof had completely caved in. The previous owner had stacked multiple layers of roofing materials on top of old wooden beams, and it just collapsed under the weight. My contractor and I decided to go with a sandwich panel roof. The top looks like traditional Spanish clay tiles, but it is actually made of aluminum. The middle is thick insulation, and the bottom is a clean white aluminum finish that doubles as your interior ceiling. It is incredibly lightweight, which is perfect for these old Spanish houses. First, we had to do the demo. My friend did the teardown, and we hired labor to haul away the rubble for about 300 euros. Then we ordered galvanized steel beams and cemented them into the walls with rebar to make sure this roof is never going anywhere. We ordered the panels, but here's a massive lesson about the Spanish lifestyle. Do not plan any major construction in August. The company that manufactures the panels takes the entire month of August off, which is common in Spain. We literally had to wait until September to even place the order. Once they arrived, my contractor set up the scaffolding and the company came to help install it. The roof panels are like a giant puzzle. The pieces just snap together. Now, how much did a brand new roof cost? Including the demo, the steel beams, the sandwich panels, and the installation labor, we got it all done for around 4,000 euros. That is actually insane. I had a cheap aluminum patio roof damaged by a hurricane in the US, and the quote to replace just the patio roof was $15,000. So while renovations in Spain can add up, certain things like this roof are still an unbelievable bargain. Once the roof was on, we had to tackle the walls and windows. Let me tell you a secret about old Spanish townhouses. Absolutely nothing is straight. Not the walls, not the floors, not the ceilings, nothing. Because of this, you cannot just run to Leroy Merlin, which is the Spanish equivalent of Lowe's or Home Depot, and buy standard sized windows off the shelf. We had to order custom cut white aluminum windows. I bought two for the upstairs bedrooms, and because they were custom, they cost me 1,500 euros. That is about double what standard windows would have cost. Here's a little tip though. If you were doing a renovation where you were cutting new window holes anyway, cut them to fit standard sizes. You will save yourself so much money. Next was the plastering. I hired a specialist for the two upstairs bedrooms, and he charged 25 euros an hour plus materials. He was incredibly skilled, but I quickly realized that at the rate, rendering the entire house was going to blow my budget out of the water. I spent about 400 to 500 euros just on the plaster, mesh, and edging for those two rooms, and over a couple grand for his labor. Then came the floors. Like I said, nothing is straight. Walking from my living room into the back hallway was a difference of several inches in height. We had to pour self leveler across the entire front of the house and create a progressive ramp up into the kitchen. We chose a beautiful terracotta colored Spanish tile for the whole house to keep it cohesive. The tiles for the entire house cost me around 1,200 euros. To save on labor, I did a lot of the grouting myself. The kitchen was another big project. I wanted a mix of modern and Spanish design. Granite and quartz countertops here were quoting me between 3,000 and 4,000 euros. I am on a budget, so I decided to go a different route. I went to IKEA and bought beautiful oak effect laminate countertops for a fraction of the cost, about 100 euros each. We even cut some of them in half to use as open shelving instead of upper cabinets to make the space feel larger. I bought the cabinet carcasses and doors from Leroy Merlin for about 1,100 euros and ordered all my appliances, including a stainless steel gas stove, an electric oven, and an American style side by side fridge from Amazon Spain for a total of 800 euros. Oh, and by the way, Amazon delivery is amazing here. My favorite room might actually be the bathroom. We completely gutted it. We built a step up platform for a freestanding oval tub, rerouted the toilet plumbing, and added a feature wall. The bathtub alone was 800 euros, a bit of a luxury splurge for me, but so worth it. But the biggest hidden cost of this renovation, the air conditioning. Central AC isn't really a thing in these older homes. You use mini split units. I bought 3 units, one for each bedroom upstairs and a large one for the downstairs living area. The units themselves were reasonably priced, maybe a few €100 each at Leroy Merlin. But the installation, because I wanted the exterior compressor units hidden on the back patio instead of ruining the front facade of the house, they had to run the drip lines and electrical work all the way through the house. It was complicated. We had to bring in a specialized electrician, and the installation alone cost me almost €2,000. I also want to talk about a cost you cannot put a direct price tag on, but you absolutely have to budget for your time, your patience, and the bureaucracy. If you are type A, you are going to need to really prepare yourself if you want to keep your nerves intact for a renovation. Things move at a slower pace here. It is part of why we love the culture. The focus is on quality of life, family, and sitting around a table having a €2 beer or a €1 coffee. But when you are trying to get a plumber to show up or waiting on a quote for glass windows from a local company that only uses pen and paper, it can test your sanity. There is also the bureaucracy. In Spain, you are technically supposed to get a permit from the local town hall for everything you change. Want to change your kitchen countertops? You need a permit. You can also buy a license for a full project, which can be pricey, but may save you money in the long run. But my contractor warned me that if you pull a full builder's license, you might be held legally responsible for the structural integrity of that house for the next 10 years. Okay, so your house is bought and renovated. What does it actually cost to keep it every year? A lot of people ask me about my tax liability. Let's break down the annual costs. There are two ongoing taxes every homeowner pays. The first is the IBI, which is your yearly property tax. This is determined by the cadastral value of the house, which we talked about before, and usually falls between 0.4% and 1.3% of that value. Because my homes are valued on the lower end, my yearly IBI payment has always been less than €200 per year. The second is the rubbish tax. Unlike the US, where you have a garbage can at the end of your driveway, in Spain, it is common to carry your trash to communal recycling bins at the end of the street. This tax is determined by the local government and usually falls between 80 and €170 per year. Next, if you are a non resident like me, you have to file a non resident income tax, even if you don't rent out your house. I pay my accountant about €90 a year to file this for me. If the house is just sitting empty, you pay between 1% and 2% of the cadastral value. I usually pay between 75 and €385 each year, which was always dependent on the cadastral value of whatever home I owned at the time. Now, if you decide to rent your house out as an Airbnb, listen closely. Non residents from outside the EU pay a flat 24% tax on rental income, and you cannot deduct expenses. If you're an EU citizen, it drops to 19%. So, if you're buying an investment property, make sure you factor a flat 24% tax off the top of your revenue into your business plan. What about utilities and banking? As a foreigner, free checking accounts do not really exist. I bank with Sabadell, and their fees recently went up to €40 per quarter, so that is €160 per year. For utilities, water is billed quarterly and usually runs me about 30 to €50 a quarter. Electricity is billed monthly. When the house is vacant, I pay about €13 a month just to keep the meter running. When I am there running the AC units, it averages closer to €100 a month. And internet, I have incredibly fast fiber optic internet for just €25 a month. Back in the US, I pay over $90 a month for internet that isn't even half as fast. For homeowners insurance, I originally used my bank and paid about €300 a year, but I recently switched to a digital first company called Luco, now Tuio, and my premium dropped to less than €100 a year. If you add all of that up, keeping my house vacant for the year cost me about €1,500 annually. If I were to live in it full time, the higher utility usage brings the annual cost to about €2,500. That is incredibly affordable. Of course, for larger, more expensive homes, it would be more in taxes, electricity, and insurance, but still very affordable. So let's look at the big picture. I bought a house for €9,000. After the surprise taxes, the attorney fees, the new roof, custom windows, AC units, plumbing, and labor, I am looking at an all-in cost of around 60 to 70,000 euros. For me, that is an absolute dream. I am getting a custom designed house in a beautiful Spanish town nestled between the mountains and the sea for a fraction of what it would cost in the US. But I had to have the cash to make it happen, and I had to have the patience to live through a 2 year long construction zone. If you do not have the time or the stomach for a renovation, I highly recommend saving up at least 100,000 euros and buying a house that is already finished. You get the same amazing Spanish lifestyle without the dust. Buying a house in Spain is such a fun adventure, but the journey does not stop once the keys are in your hand. You're still going to live your life, buy groceries, and go out for tapas. That is where my partnership with Wise goes far beyond just buying the property. Whether you are making that initial home purchase, sending regular payments to a contractor like I do, or just making transfers to your own Spanish bank account to cover your taxes and utilities, Wise makes all of these things simple and fast. So before you book your flight or start your property hunt, be sure to use the link in my video description and pinned in the comments below to get your first fee-free transfer up to $600. I know you'll be glad you did. So tell me, are you considering a home purchase in Spain? If so, would you tackle a fixer-upper like I did, or do you want something move-in ready? Let me know in the comments below. I would love to chat with you there. If you are seriously looking to buy a house in Spain, I offer one-on-one coaching sessions to help talk about your specifics, give you referrals, and help you navigate this process. You can check that out at traveltomoney.com/coaching. Do me a huge favor, hit that like button and subscribe to join me every day, where travel and adventure build financial freedom. I can't wait to see where your dreams will take you.